Hey everybody, welcome in. It is a early Friday morning. I'm recording this at 12:34 a.m. on Friday morning, just a few hours following the cancellation of the final 18 minutes of the Hall of Fame game. So I guess the final score 21-17. The Bears beat the Houston Texans in a shortened Hall of Fame game due to Mother Nature being a biatch. Welcome in. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio 610, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. weekdays, which means it starts about 5.5 hours from me recording this. I'm guessing you're listening to this. If you're listening to this or watching it on the YouTube stream, you're doing so at some point on Friday morning or afternoon. So certainly appreciate everybody who continues to subscribe to the podcast, download it, listen to it as we've been cranking out tons of content during the training camp portion of the preseason here. The Texans up in Ohio, they're going to remain up there all week next week, leading up to next Friday's game in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. The real week one of the preseason. The Hall of Fame game is kind of a bonus game, and the Texans kind of treated it like that tonight. So we'll get into all that, winners and losers from this game, and a whole lot more as the Texans lose 21-17 to the Chicago Bears. Again, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. I appreciate that. As far as the game goes tonight and the whole presentation surrounding it, of course, the whole reason the Texans are up there is because Andre Johnson is going into the Hall of Fame on Saturday afternoon. He's going to be the final speech out of all the inductees into the Hall of Fame. This whole week, this whole lead up to the Hall of Fame, as a fan of the Texans and as a big fan of Andre Johnson, to me has been even cooler than I thought it would be. Just to see how much attention it's gotten. To see Andre get the final speech at this thing, I mean, you look at the class, Andre might be sort of the crown jewel of this class. Julius Peppers, really good player. They're obviously all really good players. They're Hall of Famers. But Andre might be the biggest freak out of all the people in this Hall of Fame class. And I will say this, based on what I saw of all the Hall of Famers walking out before the game to midfield as they were getting introduced, Andre is the one in this group of Hall of Famers who I felt like I need to pull one of these guys to give me 5 snaps at the position they played when they were a player. Andre looks like he's still in shape and he could go get you. Andre looks like he could go get you like 3 catches for like 51 yards or something like that in a game if you absolutely needed it. He looks like he could still whoop some ass. So that's been really cool to see. I thought it was great. The shot, if you watched it on TV with Andre getting introduced before the game, where they cut over to D'Amico Ryans watching Andre run out, and D'Amico just had the biggest grin on his face, and you could tell it was genuine. It was the second the camera was on him, he had already been smiling ear to ear. So that kind of mirrors all the things D'Amico has been saying about Andre going into the Hall of Fame and how much it means to him personally, because he's friends and a former teammate of Andre's, how much it means to the franchise and the city. If you did not know this, the current Texans team is staying up in Canton to go to the induction ceremony on Saturday. I think that is awesome. This feels like a group of guys, this team that respects and understands the sanctity, kind of the hallowed ground that is the Hall of Fame. I think that Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans, I think part of the purposefulness of the types of guys they go get would be the exact types of guys that would appreciate what the Hall of Fame means and what that ceremony means. So that's really, really cool that they're getting to do that. As far as the game itself goes, I guess I'll start with participation in this game. Neither team played their starters. If this were the week 2 game, because these two teams face each other in the Texans home opener on Sunday Night Football in week 2. The starting lineups for that game in week 2, none of those guys played tonight. So the closest thing we had in this game from a Texans side to starters playing in this game would be Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs playing left guard and center, which would seem to indicate to me that they are both still in a competition for those positions, which they should be. Juice Scruggs has not played center in the NFL yet up until this one. He was drafted to play center, but he had to play left guard last year because Kenyon Green got hurt. Kenyon Green is back. He looks phenomenal physically, and I thought the two of them held up pretty well tonight while they were in there. When they were in there, the Texans moved the ball both on the ground and through the air. and they were running to that left side from time to time. So I haven't had a chance to go back and rewatch each of those guys. It's harder with line play, like in the moment in the game, to really know. I just know that when the two of them were out there, there was a clean pocket for Davis Mills to throw from, and the Texans ran the football pretty well. At that point, with Daria Gumbawale, although you had a J.J. Taylor, third and short pop in there, Cam Akers did some good things. We'll get to him in just a second. But it was good to see Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs out there. As far as some of the guys that did not play that I was hoping to see out there tonight, Dameon Pierce didn't play. I think that had more to do with Joe Mixon not playing. Joe Mixon has been nursing a soft tissue injury, which I think is a right quad, just based on seeing him rubbing his leg the day that he got hurt at camp. He's been working out again at camp, and he looks really good working out, but he's not suited up and worn pads, and he's yet to practice in pads as a Houston Texan. So I think Dameon Pierce not playing tonight may have had something to do with, hey, if something happens to Dameon, now all of a sudden we're running first-team offense with Daria Gumbawale out there as the number one guy. So Dameon didn't play. I would have liked to have seen him play just because he was benched at the end of last season. I want to see what Dameon looks like running in a real offense. Or a preseason real offense. So Dameon didn't play. Wouldn't have minded seeing Jalen Petrie out there since he's been the starting nickel, and we've not seen him play nickel very much at the NFL level. He played it almost exclusively at Baylor. But Petrie didn't play tonight again. Not surprised about that, just a little bit disappointed about that. And that was about it. You know, everybody else that played in that game are guys that I wanted to see and expected to see. Had zero expectation of seeing all the names you would think, you know, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Azeez Al-Shire, Derek Stingley Jr., Kamari Lassiter. That's another one. I would have liked to have seen Kamari Lassiter play a couple series just as a rookie, but you can tell what the team thinks of Kamari Lassiter. There's your starting cornerback for week one opposite Derek Stingley Jr. And then on the offensive side, I wouldn't have minded seeing Titus Howard get in there just because he hasn't played a ton of football since the middle of last season, or any football since the middle of last season other than practice. But, you know, guys like CJ Stroud, the top three wide receivers, Dalton Schultz, none of them played, and I didn't expect them to play. So that's kind of me taking attendance there. As far as the game itself, you know, winners and losers, I thought some of the winners offensively, I thought Davis Mills had a great game. Davis Mills went 10 of 13 for over 100 yards, drove the team down for a touchdown. I thought he made some plays in this game. There was one particular play he made on a pass that he ended up throwing downfield, I believe, to Ben Skoranek, where Davis Mills shook a guy in the backfield, number 92, whoever he is. He should be getting clowned in film this week for the Bears. He was coming right at Davis Mills, had him dead to rights, and Mills was able to kind of shimmy shake out of the way, plant his feet, throw a dart downfield. That's not something we've seen a ton of from Davis Mills in his 3 seasons here with the Houston Texans. That was good to see. He was very efficient, I thought. Only had a couple plays that were questionable, but it didn't cost the team. You know, there's a play where he was kind of rolling to his left. He got flushed out of the pocket. Probably could have just kept it and ran and slid. And instead, before he got to the line of scrimmage, he threw an awkward-looking shovel-type flick pass to Ben Skoranek, threw it behind him. And then there was another play right after the play that I just described where he shook number 92. A couple plays later, he almost threw an interception. So those are still the things we're dealing with Davis Mills. Case Keenum came in, drove the team down for a touchdown. So Case did some nice things. I have no idea who the backup quarterback would be if this were the regular season right now, other than Davis is starting. So it must be him, except that during the season last year, he was the backup quarterback all season. And then in week 15, when they needed a backup quarterback to start, they pivoted to Case Keenum. So we'll see. But Davis Mills, if you're somebody who wants Davis Mills to succeed because he's your backup quarterback, or wants him to succeed because he could be a trade piece, or wants him to succeed because eventually he's going to sign as a free agent somewhere else, and hey, maybe if he signs for a bunch of money, you get a better compensatory pick. Tonight was a good night for you. Davis Mills had a good night. I thought Cam Akers had a good night. Cam Akers had a night that if you look at the box score, it's not going to look as impressive, but he scored a touchdown in this game on a touchdown pass. And I thought if you were to go back and watch the series that he was in, the couple of series that he was in, he the eye test was he ran well. He found the holes. He had a little bit of burst. He was able to catch the ball out of the backfield, all those things. I thought Cam Akers made a nice statement tonight, and that spot in the backfield is very competitive right now. I think we know that Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are going to get 2 of those spots. It would appear Dario Gumbawale is going to get one just based on him starting tonight and what he does on special teams for this team, including emergency kicker. And then so there's a spot for a 4th running back if they keep 4 running backs, and that's competitive as hell right now. It's Cam Akers, Jawar Jordan, J.J. Taylor, British Brooks, all of whom saw some action tonight in those first 3 quarters. It's a shame for guys probably like British Brooks who would have carried the ball 5 or 6 times in the 4th quarter. So those are the big losers tonight, are the guys who would have gotten a shot at maybe making an impression, not necessarily cementing a spot on the team, but a chance to put some good film out there so that other teams can see them and pick them up once waivers or once the rosters get cut down to 53. So that's unfortunate for those guys. But I thought Cam Akers showed well in the time that he was in there. I thought the best of all the receivers that are vying for spots right now, and it really wasn't even close, was Xavier Hutchinson, who was the best statistically, and I thought the best just watching the game as well. Ben Skoranek did some nice things too. But Xavier Hutchinson, man, I mean, he's in a battle right now for a roster spot. 6th-round pick, rookie who got on the field last year, but he got on the field for a receiving core that at various times was missing Nico Collins and Tank Dell, and Noah Brown, and now has Stephon Diggs for sure taking up a spot in that receiver room. So I thought Xavier Hutchinson did what he needed to do tonight in order to stay in the mix, maybe even put himself above some of those guys for that 5th or 6th wide receiver spot. He had 5 catches for 56 yards on 6 targets and was really good, moving the chains and just very consistent catching the football. Had an end around for 8 yards as well that you can tack on. So good for Xavier Hutchinson as well. I thought defensively, not many winners defensively. The defense gave up 21 points in 2.5 quarters and made a few of these guys on the Bears, particularly the tight ends, made them look all world, I thought, at times. There were some coverage busts back there where on the first touchdown, there was a corner and a safety who had eyes in the backfield, and one of them didn't ride the tight end. And instead, the tight end was wide open in the end zone. But if we're looking for bright spots defensively, I thought Kalen Bullock did some things. He was throwing his body around. He forced a fumble that unfortunately the Texans just couldn't come up with. I think the official ruling was they came up with it and fumbled it back to the Bears, which meant the Bears got a first down. So I don't think the ruling, I don't think it ended up mattering. The Bears got the ball back anyways, but Kalen Bullock forced that fumble. We had him on the post-game show as a guest. He was excellent talking about the game and his first action as an NFL player. So I thought Kalen Bullock did some good things, keeping Nick Casario's stretch of productive 3rd-rounders alive. Nico Collins a few years ago, Christian Harris a couple of years ago, who didn't play tonight, by the way, and then Tank Dell last year. And I say Christian Harris didn't play. If Christian Harris were healthy, he probably wouldn't have played either. But Christian Harris, Laramie Tunsil, they haven't. Andrew Beck, those are 3 guys who haven't even practiced yet. So, and Beck is on the PUP list. So, so good job by Kalen Bullock. As far as losers for tonight, again, the defense did not impress by and large. There was some poor tackling out there. John Mechie played tonight into the 2nd quarter, so he was out there, probably longer than I might have expected him. I think Mechie's had a pretty good camp only because he's looked faster and more explosive. He's been inconsistent catching the football, but he's also made some plays in camp. Primarily for Mechie, I've just been looking for him to get his explosiveness back. So he looks like he has that. Unfortunately, tonight it didn't translate. He had 1 catch for 4 yards, and then his other target, he dropped the ball on 3rd down. So I don't know where that puts Mechie if tonight is any sort of swing vote for that wide receiver room. I thought all along that Mechie was pretty close to a lock to make this team, but I know that others don't feel that way. I know Clint Stoerner, my co-host on the postgame show, does not feel that way about John Mechie. I know Cody Stutz, who does a great job on Houston football, HOUfootball.com. He thinks that Mechie is the number 7 wide receiver right now. I thought all along Mechie was number 4, or worst case number 5, along with Noah Brown. Maybe you could flip those 2 around. But tonight was not a good night for John Mechie. Kaimi Fairbairn missed a field goal. It was from 58 yards. I can't get too worked up about that. We got our first look at the new kickoff rule in tonight's game. If I'm listing losers for this game, this is not necessarily a Texans loser, but just in general. The new kickoff format didn't yield any big plays that made me think that, oh, this is going to change the game or anything like that. There were a lot more returns in this game than we got in a normal NFL game last season, which I guess is good, but none of them went beyond the 32-yard line. So we didn't see any big explosive plays. I don't think we saw anything that's going to send special teams coaches from a coverage standpoint back to the drawing board. It looked like it was awfully tough for either of these teams to get anything going in the return game. So that was kind of a dud. I was really hoping to see a couple long returns, and then that would have people really talking about the potential impact for this rule. But right now, one game in a preseason, I get it. But one game in, there's zero impact with this rule, with all these new returns. Other than guys throwing their bodies around for 8 or 9 extra plays. So that's about it. The game got cut short, so there probably would have been some more winners if we had a chance to see the fourth quarter preseason edition of the Texans, but we did not. As far as how things are going the rest of the weekend, of course, we got you covered on Sports Radio 610 starting in about 5 hours and 10 minutes from me recording this. Seth Payne and I will have sort of a reaction Friday to this game. And then, of course, 10 to 2 in the loop. And then the guys on the drive, Clint Stoerner and Ron Hughley, are doing their show live. I forget the name of the bar, but they're doing it live at a bar up in Canton, Ohio. So if you're in Canton, Ohio listening to this, or you're headed up there on Friday, if you're maybe headed up there early in the morning, just know that there will be a live remote broadcast in Canton, Ohio. That's going to be really cool. I'm very jealous of that. I would like to be up there for that with all the Texan fans going to watch Andre go into the Hall of Fame. And then, of course, that takes place noon on Saturday, I believe noon, either noon or 11 local time, but middle of the day, lunchtime is when it starts. Andre goes last among the speakers. So plan accordingly for that. If you feel like watching Dwight Freeney and Devin Hester, Steve McMichael's wife accepting on his behalf, etc., Julius Peppers go into the Hall of Fame, then tune in from the beginning. If you're just up there to watch Andre Johnson or you're looking forward to seeing him, he's going to go last. So, but that'll be on Saturday. Texans are in Ohio all week next week practicing, so there will not be any training camp recap podcasts. However, I will have a mailbag on Tuesday. So anything that you saw happen in this Hall of Fame game, anything that you've heard us talking about on 610, houmailbag@gmail.com, houmailbag@gmail.com if you want to send me an email. We'll do a mailbag on Tuesday. We will do a preview of the Pittsburgh game, the preseason game, on Thursday this week. Things to watch for. I would imagine we're going to see starters in that game briefly, probably 2 series at the most, especially for the frontline starters, the big names. So I would imagine we'll see starters in that game. So there'll be more to watch for in that game. We'll have the preview Thursday, and then I'll do a recap following that game that you'll have for next weekend. The game's on Friday night. You'll have it all set to go, if not late Friday night, probably on Saturday morning. So you have it in time. You can listen to it as you eat your breakfast or as you barbecue later on in the day. So for Anthony Irwin, my producer, who gets the podcast out to all of you, again, all of you, really appreciate you listening, telling a friend, subscribing to this. I'm having a blast just following training camp. I always follow it closely for the radio show, but to be able to follow it as closely as I've been and then give immediate reaction to it, and for you guys to be reacting to that reaction has been really, really cool. So continue to subscribe and listen to the podcast. Really appreciate you guys. So until next week, until the mailbag on Tuesday, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your weekend a whole lot, and I will see you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.